Hello everyone, I'm back with another episode of PMP Exam Prep Power Hour. And today we are exploring a topic related to user stories. And as usual, we will talk about some of the specific queries you have related to your PMP exam. I'm your host, Saket Bansal, and I'm here with a mission of supporting you to get educated in project management and also get certified as a PMP professional. So this stream should be live on YouTube as well as on LinkedIn. And both the places, if you have any query, if you want to give me some input, you can just put your comment. You should see a comment section in the parallel to this particular stream, and that is the place where you can put some of your queries. The usual pattern is that I start with my specific topic, and then we take a pause and we talk about your specific queries related to PMP exam preparation. So I see some of you are still joining in, so welcome. And let me start with my prepared topic. Yeah, so the focused topic first. Okay, so today we want to talk about user stories and from the perspective of project manager. So user stories for project managers, that's our major focus area. Now, if you're new to Agile and you started reading about project management and you learned that good percentage of PMP content includes Agile, and you may see that there is something called product backlog and it contains user stories. And user story is something which help us in doing requirement exploration. So yes, that's the focus area for this session. And I want to explore that how as a project manager, we can use user stories. One of the things we can keep in mind is that it is not something you must use. Agile can be used without using user stories also. User stories is one of the way of talking about requirement, exploring requirement. So say you conduct interview and you may fill a particular survey form based on that. And based on that survey form, you may collect the requirement. That's a one possibility. Or you go to some site visit, you prepare a document and you take a review of that document and you prepare a scope or a requirement document accordingly. That's another possibility. The user story is an alternative to these things, but it is designed to support incremental exploration of requirement. Yeah. It is more associated with software or digital kind of product, where we focus more on user-centric requirement. Primarily, it is used in Agile software development. So if you are doing project management and you are thinking Agile can be used at multiple places, yes, it can be used. But try to understand first user story with the help of software requirement more, and then probably you will find out ways of using it in your particular context as well. So that's the starting point. Now, why should we use user story? In Agile way of working, we want to talk about requirements in incremental manner. We don't want to create a 100-page document and then start working on it, because we know that our understanding of requirement is expected to evolve as we go along. Now, we need some requirement instrument or requirement gathering instrument or requirement talking instrument, I would say exploration instrument. Gathering is not a right word, because gathering assumes that requirements were just lying and you just need to collect them. It's more like discovery of requirements. Now, user story is which helps you talking about requirement from a user-centric approach. Who wants to do what? And it is designed in such a way so that you can divide the requirement in small slices. You can create small piece of requirement which still makes sense to the end user. And it is designed in such a way so that we can elaborate it incrementally. It's not like that I need to get all the details about a user story in a first go. I can start with something and then I can elaborate it further. It also provide tools and technique. If we have a user story which is big, we can slice into smaller stories, and creating these smaller stories help us in incremental delivery of our products. So by creating small slice, by continuously supporting exploration, by providing the early delivery possibles and still a valuable delivery, not just a delivery, user story becomes an important instrument for Agile way of working or Agile software way of working. Now, when you learn about user story, many a time you end up learning about a format of user story. You may say that there is a template. As a user, I want to do something so that I achieve something. So it's a recommended template. You must not necessarily must follow it, but it's a good idea to explore this particular template. This template talk about that we need to start focusing on identification of stakeholder or a user-centric requirement. So we need to start from who needs that requirement. So we talk about that who first, persona or a user role. So as a say a working professional or as a person who is preparing for PMP certification. So that could be your user or a category of group of persona or a role explanation. You want to do something. You want to do something with the application so that you achieve some goal. So say that I want to find out the pattern of PMP exam so that I can prepare for PMP exam. So that could be your user story. So if you are creating a user story for a learning app, which will support you doing PMP certification, you may start talking about that as a PMP aspirant, I want to have a learning app which helps me in preparing for PMP. But that will be a big story. Yeah. So even though it's a user story, but this may be a big because it may not be able to done completed in a small slice. Many a time such kind of big stories are called epics. We can explore them. But then you go into a small slice. We can say I need such a small slice which can be done in a 1 week time. Then you may say that as a PMP aspirant, I want to take a practice test of 10 questions. Yeah, so that I can see my readiness for PMP exam. Yeah, that could be a big or small. If this is also big, then you probably will have that as a PMP aspirant, I want to see a report of my practice test. Yeah, that could be another small story. So the whole idea we are focusing on is that we create a small slice which relates a user who is a PMP aspirant and what he is doing, and he can achieve or she can achieve a particular value out of it. So each small slice of requirement should provide a value. Now, when I create these small slices, it supports me incremental value delivery as well. So we may not be able to make the whole application to support PMP aspirant in a first 2 weeks or in a first month, but we can find out some of the essential elements, small pieces, and there is a possibility all those small pieces come together will create a usable application to start with, which can be explored in future. So that's a small format and examples of the user story. For a PMP exam, if you get a question and you need to identify a good user story out of it, you try to see that it should start from a user, not as a user I want to do something. Then it is a little trap. As a PMP aspirant, as a buyer, as a e-commerce application user, something like that. Yeah, so it gives a little segmentation or a category or a role or a particular persona of the user. Then you move forward, and then you need to see that it should be a valuable thing also, rather than just talking about the technical details. So this could be your format of a user story and also can be useful for your PMP exam preparation. Now, if you have any question on these things, please feel free to keep putting your queries in between, and then we can take them as we move forward. Now, how do we elaborate user stories? How do we incrementally evolve the user stories? So you might have studied that user stories are stored in a product backlog. Yes, we can say. Now, what is product backlog? In our Agile way of working, product backlog is one place where we talk about what we want to do in future. Yeah, we want to do, we possibly will do it. It's not a guarantee that we will do it. It's not a commitment. So product backlog is a possibilities, opportunities which we want to implement in upcoming iterations. So any new idea comes in our mind, we put a one-liner, two-liner information, and we add that into a product backlog. Now, this thing sometimes also elaborated with the help of card, conversation, and confirmation. Sometimes you hear about 3 C's in your theory space. And we can say we have created a card, we have created a container, and we are thinking of making on or working on this particular requirement. But as of now, in this iteration, we are not that much focusing on it. So we just want to put a reminder for it and we put into a product backlog. Now, over a period of time, as we understand, the product backlog is continuously expected to refine. So refine means you are creating more details, you are creating smaller items out of big items. So periodically, these all high-level ideas which are there in your product backlog your team and your stakeholders. We can say the product owner, who is a critical stakeholder, might lead this particular initiative. They come together and they start exploring those user stories more aggressively, the one which are more promising, and we want to take the execution step in a near future. So out of various ideas which we have, we explore them. If some of the ideas are not relevant, we can drop them also. Yeah, we need to explore them incrementally. Some stories may never get refined because you like, oh, this idea was great idea 1 month ago, but now it is not a good idea. And that's the purpose. That's how it is different from your work breakdown structure or a software specific and requirement, because there we believe once we have a requirement, we must elaborate and we must implement. Here, it's a opportunity, it's an idea. As of now, it is at a summary level. Over a period of time, we will see if you want to elaborate it. So periodically, we keep reviewing them, and when we review, we may add some more information to it. Now, if we become very specific and we say, okay, this is something we need to work on an upcoming iteration itself, then we add more details to the user story, and many a time it is called adding acceptance criteria. So we also explain this topic with the help of 3 C's: card, conversation, and confirmation. So you may see these words in your PMP content. So this is how you can relate it. So card is that opportunity or a reminder to talk about this user story. Conversation is we are exploring them, we are evolving or evaluating, should we consider this requirement or drop it. And then if we like it and we are very near to its implementation, we want to make it testable. We want to make sure that this story is something which will provide a user value, and we can really see the value has been delivered by way of putting some test points to it. And that is called acceptance criteria. So for example, if you have a user story that as a PMP aspirant, I should be able to take 10-question test for my PMP preparation. The acceptance criteria could be that I should be able to take a time-bound test. I should be able to take without time-bound test. I should be able to store the result and resume it later. So all those possible, which will help us in seeing that is this particular user-centric requirement is really implemented. And with the help of acceptance criteria, we also clarify our understanding. So say we work with the stakeholder, we work with the product owners, and we tell them that just don't tell us one-liner requirement. It was good to talk about one-liner requirement 1 month ago, but now we are specific and we need to get into more details so we can explore those requirements in a more critical manner or more detailed manner. So this is how we elaborate the user stories, and this is also known as a 3 C's. Now, another important thing which let me put it as a banner only. So this is something is also called invest. Sometimes you see this acronym in your PMP content or somewhere. And it is also a good idea to evaluate invest when you are evaluating a good or bad user story in your PMP exam. So invest is an acronym which talks about a user story should be independent, negotiable, valuable, estimatable, small, and testable. Yeah, so that's the invest. The critical thing is small and testable. So one thing is the user story, if we have too much dependencies, then it will not facilitate prioritization. The agile way of working is always, if we have 100 requirement, we want to identify which are the 5-10 requirement we can work in this 2 weeks time. And if they are intermingled requirement, then we have a difficulty in picking up the priorities. Yeah, we pick up a one requirement along with the 10 other requirement comes in, and we can say this is the only way to do it. So when we are slicing, when we are creating the user story, we should do extra thinking to find out how can we make our different requirement independently executable, demonstrable, or value provided. They can provide independent value to the end customer. Now, many a time it may not be possible, but we should always look for opportunities to make our user stories independent. The another thing is a negotiable. Negotiable means that you should not equate that I need to take a sign off on the user story, then only I will work on it. Many of you coming from a project management background start thinking like that. User stories are conversational oriented. They are always open. Even when we are developing the user story, some new exploration and ideas can come, and we should be open to talk about it. Now, till when the user story can be negotiated? Till the time it gets done. So say I'm working on a user story, and if I get a new idea, and it's a negotiable, it doesn't mean that if my product owner has a new idea, we must follow it. We can say this is a great idea, but it can't be done in this 2 weeks time box. maybe we take it later as a separate story, or we may say, yeah, it's a great idea and it won't require much effort right now. I think we do it as part of this because next time it will become more complicated. So it's more collaborative way of working, but it is a negotiable thing. So important. Valuable, the think of a user story, it provides value to the end user. So don't say, as a developer, I want to create unit testing so that I will get a benefit out of it. Now, if the application is a tool for unit testing, then it's a great user story. Yeah. So it's a tool which supports developers unit testing, then it's good. But if your application is creating a PMP practice test or PMP e-learning module, and then you are saying, as a developer, I want to do this, that's not a user story. User story should be focusing on the consumer or the stakeholder or the user of the application, not anyone who is there in the development process. So I need to see the value should be going to the user of the application, not the developer of the application. So that could be a good trick to find out not a so good user story. It should be estimatable and small. Now, initially, when you just create a card level user stories, you will want to put some estimate number to it. That could be a little bigger topic. We have a story point estimation videos also available. And the story should be small enough. Small enough means by the time you pick up the story in a given time box of sprint, you are taking that point in time, the story should be small enough so it fits into the boundaries of the sprint. We don't want to have a situation where you say, this story will run 2 iterations and then we will finish it. If you are doing it, then we are delaying the feedback during first iteration. We never come to know what is happening till the time it is reaching to the second iteration. And if we cannot deliver the value also based on the first iteration work, so we need to create a slice which is small enough so it fits well in a 2 weeks sprint duration. We tend to finish end-to-end user story as per our definition of done in that particular 2 weeks time. If story is big, we need to split it. But the initial exploration, initial cards could be at a big level. There is a special name associated with this big requirement, which is called epics. So if your requirement is bigger than 2 weeks duration, we call it epic. And by the time the story is expected to allocate it in a given sprint, it should be testable. So use this invest as a guideline for evaluating user stories for your PMP exam. Now, another important area, who creates user story? There could be a trap in your PMP questions as well related to that as well. So from a agile way of working, from project management way of working, anyone can create a user story, anyone. Project manager, less likely though, but team members, quality people, stakeholders, and project manager can also, if you are focusing on PMP exam. Now, whoever has a great idea, whoever has a good thinking about the requirement, they can add a user story to a product backlog. Now, somebody will say, if this is like this, then there is no control. It's like anyone keep adding requirement, my team keep working, and we are in a chaos. So anyone can write or add a requirement to a product backlog, but will it stay there? Will be decided by product owner. So we can say in our project management or in our Scrum way of working, we need to identify a stakeholder or a review process of this user story, which is called backlog refinement. And that refinement process takes the final call, which story goes out of the backlog, which story stays there, which stories get refined, and which story get prioritized. So adding the story into the product backlog is not a guarantee of that we will work on it and we will make it done. So this is a very important point for a PMP exam perspective. It is just an opportunity and anyone can suggest that opportunity, and we have a process led usually by product owner. You can also say product owner / customer in case of PMP exam. They will explore it, and we are continuously working on that exploration process, and that is called backlog refinement, and based on that it stays there or goes out. So overall accountability of user story is with product owner, if that word is visible in your question, or customer. So product owner is a first preference, but if product owner word is not in your question, then customer can also take the ownership of the user stories. So that's the overall idea. So final PMP exam tip I was giving in between. So please keep in mind the invest that's there. When you focus on as a user, please do look for the user which is a business user, not any user who is using it. Try to see the stories should be small. That's there. They should focus on a target user getting some value. So invest, even if you don't remember rest of the invest, The small and value and testability, these three things are very important. Sometimes by looking at the description in the PMP exam, you may not be able to figure out if it is small or not small, because small is a relative thing. But you should look for ability to see, is it a testability is achieved at some extent, usually achieved with the help of acceptance criteria, but the value should be achieved. So value can be achieved by way of having identified user, and then goal is also that the value is also stated in the user story. So look for the user and the value, that will be good. And always keep in mind that adding the user story in the backlog is not the guarantee of getting it done. Yeah, I think if you keep these things in mind, you are good. And the product backlog is a place where you store the user stories or keep them, prioritize them, and backlog refinement is the meeting where you work on the user stories. Yeah. Okay, so we do have some questions, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so we can say user story can be written by anyone in the team. Is that the statement correct? Okay, that's just recently we said it, yeah. And I says that I think we covered it, yeah. So if written by someone else, then it will be defined as yes, perfectly right. Yes, yeah. That's the whole idea. Now I was doing LinkedIn learning course, and they had a question of only PO can write the user story. So each course has a writer, and the writer only can justify what is right or what is wrong. But for general Scrum understanding, scaled Agile understanding, as well as project management understanding, anyone can write the user story. And that seems to be the good answer for you for your interviews. I don't know about the LinkedIn learning course. You probably need to ask the creator and ask for detailing about it. Yeah. Great. I think this is something we covered directly in our talk itself. So if anyone has a query here, please feel free to put it here, and you can put it in the chat statement, comment area. Even if you are in a LinkedIn, then you can put it. I think today LinkedIn is working. That day, last time it was not working. So I just put a hi there. Yeah, so you can use that as well. Yeah, or in a PMP YouTube space. Okay, so how do we size the user story? This is little bigger concept, but we can take it. First thing is we do have 4 videos in our YouTube channel which explains how to do story point estimation. Yeah. So one of the technique we use is a story point estimation. Yeah. Now, how do we size it? The intent of Agile way of working is that we want to create some amount of estimation without getting into too much details. So when we are focusing on estimating user story, as we discussed in our previous topic of estimation, we did a session before, that it is going with some amount of error. Whatever I estimate will have a 20-30% error. I can't say that if you are saying X number of days or X number of hours or X number of points, it should exactly take that much. That is not possible. So we want to estimation at a user story level is with a 10-20% error. That's the first thing. Now what we do, we put the user stories in front of our team and try to ask them that, can you categorize these user stories into multiple buckets? One is a simple bucket and maybe a one pointer. So simple, medium, complex, like that. Yeah. So we want to categorize them. Now, can I have only simple, medium, large, or can I have 5, 10, 20 buckets? That is something I decide. So in the Agile way of working, we use Fibonacci series and we use planning poker as a tool. And we can say we can move, or we can put some pointers like 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. We decide the series. And then we have a conversation with our team members and say, which one of these 10 user stories is the simplest? And if we give that simplest story 1, then the other one are double complex, triple complex, or 5 times complex, and accordingly we will give them a ranking. And this method of doing is called story point estimation, and the way we facilitate it is called planning poker. So planning poker way of working put a size to a user story. That size will help us in finding, the size should be given by considering volume, complexity, uncertainty, risk, all those factors by the team. And if team has a disagreement on the size, they will discuss it and they will reach to an agreement and they will put that size number there. Later on, this size number will guide us how long this user story probably will take, yeah, how many iterations we will take with the help of our velocity estimation. But we start with the sizing, but the size is not directly equivalent to effort. We need to estimate effort later on when we go for sprint planning, or we will observe effort as we start finishing our sprints. But as of now, we can say that yes, we did an estimation session before, and we have a specific 4 videos on user story estimation, yeah, with the help of story point. But for PMP exam, I think whatever we discussed in this class as of now is good enough. Yeah? So you remember the story point is put in there. Story point is something which you put on the stories, and it is based on expert judgment, it is based on comparison, and it is something which help us in finding out the size of the user story. And effort will be driven later. There is no formula to drive effort, but it will get influenced, or we have some judgment based on the size. We know that how much time it is going to take. Okay, so yeah, we did one user story writing session long back. Yes, yeah, we'll see. Uh, I think I made some video on using AI also, how to use AI to create user stories. But yes, I will keep in mind if we can plan some session as well. Okay, would we expecting a question on non-functional user stories? So important point here is user stories are always functional. Yeah, that's there. But at the same time, you may have a non-functional requirements also. For PMP exam, I don't expect they will go that much detail. So say if I am working on an application, not all the requirements are user-centric. There could be compliance-centric, there could be a security-centric, there could be infrastructure-centric, there could be other dimensions also, which I need to prepare in order to satisfy the user. So those kind of things, we can say we have a functional requirement, say I want to use a particular application, and there should be a non-functional requirement which ensures that application is available, application is really running, and application is secure enough. So all those things will be our non-functional requirement. So in general, from a PMP exam perspective, we don't create user stories for non-functional requirement, but we create technical stories, enabler stories, or something else. Yeah. So there will be a non-functional requirement. There will be an element in our work which is non-functional in nature, but I don't have to forcefully call that particular thing as a user story. I can call it something else. Yeah. So there are framework like Scaled Agile, call them enabler. There are some teams, they call them technical stories. Some they call them just other work than user story. And this can be there in a product backlog. So for a PMP exam, what I can keep in mind that not everything which is there in a product backlog is user story. I know sometimes the content shows that product backlog contains user story, but it is little very hypothetic or a very simplification of it. User story is more about user-centric requirement. You can have changes, you can have a defect, you can have an infrastructure improvement, you can have an upcoming training plans. All those things can go in your product backlog. Product backlog contains all the work which team is expected to do in the near term. It's the possibilities and opportunities which we are putting into the product backlog. Yeah. So that much understanding should be good enough for your PMP exam. Okay. So I see LinkedIn, no comment, I think. I hope there is no comment coming from LinkedIn. If someone is typing, it is not reaching me. Sometime LinkedIn has an issue, but seems to be today there is no issue. There is no comment naturally. And YouTube comments, most of I have taken care, and then we can see. So we have a question that in the Agile environment, product backlog can also contain risk. So we spoke about risk in detail in our previous episode. That will be a good place to look into. The answer is the risk impacts product backlog. How it impacts? the prioritization of the product backlog items are done based on risk. If you want to take some mitigation strategy or some response planning, that will also be visible in a product backlog. So say you have a technical uncertainty, and in order to take care of the technical uncertainty, you want to do some kind of experiments. So you will add those experimental items in your product backlog, and you will prioritize them in an upcoming iteration because you want to learn about this experiment soon so that you can mitigate future risk. So whatever I want to respond to risk, my risk responses are there in product backlog, and it is also influencing my priorities. Now, do I need to create a separate artifact for risk? That depends. You can create it. You can create a risk log or a risk register, or you can have something in case it is needed. But the essential requirement is we should have a risk-adjusted product backlog, which is always a case in case of agile way of working. Okay, so this was about user stories and taking care of risk-adjusted product backlog here. So if anyone has a query, please put it into the chat section so that we can take them. If no problem. We just wait for a while, and if there is no query coming in, we close the session. Okay, so there's a question. User stories are always connected to the epics. So it depends in which context we are talking. So say sometime you use a tool like Jira or Azure DevOps. You may have your internal working agreement to make sure the user story should be a child of epic. That could be there. But for the concept of user story, as well as for PMP exam, it is not mandatory. So we can say epic is something which is a big requirement, which came in your mind first, and then you wanted to implement it incrementally because that's the way agile we want. We want to have an incremental feedback, and you created small slice out of it. You may want to maintain a relationship or some kind of reference that these small slices are coming because of that epic. It's a good idea. But there is a possibility some small slice of requirement directly come in your mind, which is not there as a big requirement before. Then you can directly add that into your product backlog. So for an exam perspective, for interviews perspective, for practitioner perspective, it is not expected to be an enforced rule where you say that each user story should belong to epic. So there is nothing like that. And but in case you want to have your own working agreement like that because of some reason, you do it. But in general, it is not a rule. And another important point is, in case of agile way of working, we are not that much focusing on traceability. In our predictive way of working, we focus on requirement traceability matrix, where we have a requirement and we put into our Excel kind of sheet, we have ID of requirement, and then we trace it. Now, this is something there. But overall, the agile way of working is more focused on taking continuous feedbacks. So even if something was not initially designed, but later on you have a small item coming in, you can do that. You can definitely do that and move forward with it. So overall, with the help of working software, you do traceability, not with the help of mapping sheet. That's there. So we have a LinkedIn user commenting that it has to be connected. How else will connect it to the organizational objectives and goal? So organizational objectives and goals may not always come with epic. In case of agile way of working, for PMP exam perspective, Epic is an optional thing. You can directly have a user story level requirement also. So say if I'm talking about the application to support e-learning of PMP user, I may directly get an idea that I want to give a Google login authentication. Now that's a simple authentication. I will integrate it. I don't have necessarily have to create Epic. We'll say, this Epic is login, and inside login, I have this user story. I don't necessarily create if I have a small application. But in the same site, we are talking about, I want to have a dashboard. I want to have a dashboard of reports. I will say dashboard is a big Epic, and we will create multiple dashboards under it. So it all depends upon how we manage. But if you say that I want to have that way only, that is your internal working agreement. You can definitely do it. Now, am I just doing login without having any goal for the organization? Definitely. My project has a goal that we want to support learner to learn project management. So for that objective only, we initiated this project of creating this idea. So all the work which we are doing is definitely contributing to that particular goal or objective. But it is not necessary to be controlled with the help of enforcing that you must have an Epic, then only you have a user story for PMP exam. If your company wants to do that way of enforcement, that is perfectly fine. Yeah. But that's how you say. Now, if we don't do it, it can lead to a scope creep. So we need to be very clear about the word scope creep and gold plating when it comes to agile way of working. Agile way of working, the prioritization is happening continuously, and the tool which controls uncontrolled expansion of scope is backlog refinement, not a traceability matrix, not a documentation, not a checklist. So we can say the continuous backlog refinement and continuous demonstration at the end of iteration should facilitate ensuring everyone remain aligned to a common purpose rather than focusing on document and traceability. Yeah. But if your organization focuses on document and traceability for that particular objective, no problem. But the agile idea is not promoting that way. That's your hybrid process. You can say, yes, we follow that hybrid process, perfectly fine. But agile idea focuses on working software is the only measurement of progress. Another important thing we need to keep in mind, the agile idea does not promote user story as a must-have thing. You can do agile way of working without user stories also for a PMP exam as well. So you can say that if we don't have a user story, still we achieve organizational goal, but we can use maybe use cases. We can probably use say jobs. There are people say jobs to be done. That could be another format of collecting requirement. There could be multiple way of collecting and talking about requirement or exploring requirement rather than collecting, but it should support incremental exploration. That's the important idea. We should not have such a big requirement which takes months to develop. Even if you have a big user story which takes months to develop, then also you are not following Agile. Yeah? So that much we can keep in mind. Finally, we got some comment from LinkedIn. So it looks like that the tool seems to be working. But yes, yeah, just it reached towards the end stage. So that was good. Okay, we could see some of the comment coming from there. Great. Any follow-up query, comment? Comment is also good. You can put it. I will show it here, read it. If I have some opinion, I will share. The work you do, you do. Your process is owned by you. I am nowhere to comment what is right and what is wrong. My focus of explanation thing is to give you a right mindset for PMP exam, which is generically followed practices for project management, generally follow practices for project management. But in a PMP, we also teach everyone that each project is unique. You need to find out your own tailoring. You need to find out your own practices, which helps you in developing your project better. And that's your process. And you should use your process only, not somebody else, or not PIMBOX process or PMI process. They are good reference point, but for exam, you know that what are the generic reference point until unless question shows some specific details. Okay. Any other question, comment before we conclude this topic? Okay, so looks like we are settling down. This was a relatively small topic as well, user stories. And I think by way of doing 29 episodes, we have covered good amount of project management concepts already. So I am also considering that we need to relook at the frequency of our sessions, because looks like we have covered 29 episodes, around 29 hours of content, and usually the overall PMP may not have more than 50 hours of content. Preparation may take more time, but most of the content can explain in the 50 hours time. But yes, we take a little diversion. We sometimes get into more details than what is needed for PMP exam. So let's see how things goes. But this is something I'm also making a plan for our upcoming sessions. As usual, my recommendation, my request, if you have any specific topic in mind which can help PMP participants to prepare for PMP exam faster, please drop us a message. You can drop in a LinkedIn or in a YouTube or in a WhatsApp group. Some of you are part of our WhatsApp group also. So you can put it there and we will take that in our upcoming sessions. Yeah. Okay. So thank you everyone for your participation. See you soon. Bye for now.